In the late 1940s, a builder named William Levitt split house building into an assembly line. One crew for foundations, one for framing, and one for plumbing. And it ran like a factory. At peak production, a finished house rolled off that line every 16 minutes. Not one house start to finish in 16 minutes, a new one every 16 minutes, for years. That's how you build a whole country's worth of starter homes. Today, building the cheap, modest version of a house is treated like a magic trick nobody remembers how to perform. So, did we forget how to build houses? Not even slightly. We remembered how, and then spent 70 years building a system where the cheap version is often illegal, impractical, or impossible to build profitably. Here's the fast version of the mystery. In many American cities, the small, modest housing everyone actually loves, duplexes, triplexes, little walk-up apartment buildings, the stuff that fills the charming old neighborhood people drive across town to visit, is illegal on large portions of residential land. In many US cities, the large majority of residential land is zoned exclusively for detached single-family homes. Planners have a name for everything in between a single house and a big apartment tower. The duplexes, row houses, small multiplexes, they call it the missing middle. Missing because many communities stopped allowing enough of it to be built, so it doesn't get built. Not because nobody wants to live in a small townhouse near their job, plenty of people would, but because in large parts of the country, it's not even an option on the table. And that's the bottom rung of the housing ladder gone. Not because it stopped being useful, but because we made it disappear. Now, put yourself in the builder's shoes. The land under that lot costs the same whether you put a small house on it or a big one. So do most of the permits, the legal reviews, the utility hookups, the financing costs. Those bills show up before a single extra bedroom gets built. A smaller house uses less lumber, sure, but it doesn't use half a sewer connection or half a 6-month approval process. Those costs are fixed, whether the house is modest or enormous. So the builder faces a choice: build the small, cheap house and fight for a razor-thin margin buyers will still call expensive, or add square footage and nicer finishes and sell to a buyer with more money and a much fatter margin. Guess which one gets built? This is the actual answer to why don't builders just build cheaper houses? It's not usually that they refuse, it's that the math doesn't work out when a huge chunk of the cost is attached to the project, not the size of the house. America didn't ban the small house everywhere, it built a machine that keeps upgrading it until the numbers pencil out. Even where duplexes and small homes are technically legal, a second layer of rules quietly raises the price. Minimum lot sizes mean you can't put a small house on a small piece of land. You're required to buy more dirt than you need. Parking minimums require a set number of spots per unit, whether or not anyone owns a car. In dense areas, structured or underground parking can add tens of thousands of dollars per space, whether the eventual resident wants the space or not. Add setback rules, height caps, and design boards that can require expensive materials for purely aesthetic reasons, and none of it sounds unreasonable in isolation. Some of these rules genuinely earn their keep. Nobody wants a chemical plant sharing a wall with a daycare. But stack a few dozen well-intentioned rules on every lot in every city, and you've made the cheap version of a house functionally impossible, even with land, demand, and a builder ready to go. Say a project clears zoning. Now it needs permits, and in many cities, even housing allowed by the base zoning can sit in review for months, working through permits, design reviews, and sometimes public hearings before a single brick moves. This is where the neighbor shows up. Economists have a slightly snide term for existing homeowners who oppose new construction nearby: NIMBY, or not in my backyard, usually citing traffic, parking, or neighborhood character. Here's the actual problem with that dynamic. The people who'd benefit from the new building, its future residents, aren't in the room. They don't have a local address yet, and they usually don't even know which project might eventually become their home. The people mildly inconvenienced by 18 months of construction noise absolutely can show up, and they do, every time. That's a rigged room. Organized opposition versus a constituency with no local vote and no local address, and every month of delay adds real cost. Loan interest, consultants, redesigns, rising material prices, and months of carrying land that produces nothing, which gets baked straight into the final price of the home. Even with paperwork cleared, someone has to swing the hammer. Construction has had a labor shortage building for years, an aging workforce, and a brutal hit during the 2008 crash that pushed a whole generation of skilled tradespeople out of the industry. Many never came back. There's also a quieter issue. Construction productivity has historically lagged sectors like manufacturing. Recent years have been uneven, some upticks, some declines, but over long periods, Home building hasn't achieved the same dramatic efficiency gains as factory production. We're still building homes largely one at a time, on site, by hand, roughly the way we did 50 years ago, while lumber, concrete, and labor got steadily more expensive around that mostly unchanged process. And then there's the dirt itself. This is premium dirt now. In desirable metro areas, the price of the land under a house can rival the cost of building the house. Land itself may be fixed, but the number of homes allowed on it is not. When zoning permits only one home on a lot where several could physically fit, all of that location's value gets concentrated into one legal address, and whoever buys it pays for all of it alone. Land, labor, delay, and regulation don't act independently. They stack. Each one alone is survivable. All of them at once, on every project, in every city, with actual jobs and demand, is how a country that mass-produced 15 million homes after World War II somehow forgot how to build a cheap one today. One more common misconception, because it comes up in every comments section. Just lower interest rates and this fixes itself. Affordability has two prices: the price of the house and the price of borrowing the money to buy it. Lower rates absolutely help individual buyers' monthly payments, and can even support new construction. But when supply can't respond quickly, cheaper borrowing hands buyers bigger budgets to bid against each other for nearly the same number of addresses. Some of that extra buying power ends up as higher prices instead of more homes. The same logic applies to down payment assistance and other buyer subsidies. They can genuinely help specific families get into a home, but if supply can't respond, they also add fuel to demand for a housing stock that isn't growing. Helping people bid harder isn't the same as giving them more to bid on. Eventually, somewhere, someone actually has to build something. Quick objection, because it comes up constantly. They're only building luxury apartments. Often true. New construction usually isn't the cheapest housing on the market on day one. But people move through housing in chains. When a higher income household takes the new unit, it frees up the place they used to live. Someone else moves into that one and frees up theirs. Economists call part of this filtering. And today's relatively cheap apartment was often yesterday's shiny new building with a name like The Residences at somewhere. Refusing to build new housing because it starts out expensive doesn't preserve affordability. It just forces wealthier buyers to compete for the older housing everyone else was hoping to afford. Stop filling the top of the ladder and people don't vanish. They start bidding on the rungs below them. That said, filtering isn't a complete fix on its own. It won't make new construction affordable to the lowest income households overnight. Direct assistance, subsidized housing, and preserving existing low-cost units all remain necessary alongside it. Many of the biggest barriers in this video are policy choices, which means they can also be changed. Cities that allow duplexes and small multiplexes on land that used to be single-family only have seen more of that missing middle housing actually get built. Cities that cut parking minimums have watched smaller, cheaper units become financially viable again. Faster, rules-based permitting, sometimes called by right approval, meaning if you meet the code, you don't need to win a public vote, cuts months of costly delay out of every project. On the labor and materials side, factory-built and modular construction could reduce build times and improve consistency where the economics work. It's still a relatively small share of the market today, but it gives builders another tool. None of it requires reinventing anything. It mostly means unwriting rules that have piled up for decades. Rules that each sounded reasonable on their own, and together made the cheapest rung of American housing illegal to build. America didn't forget how to pour concrete or frame a wall. Builders still know how to put up something small, cheap, and functional. Plenty would love to. What changed is that thousands of individually responsible rules piled up over 70 years. And together, they made the affordable version of the American home very hard to legally build. The fix isn't a mystery either. Zoning maps, parking minimums, permitting timelines, a construction industry that needs workers and better tools. It's not fast or glamorous, but we've done it before, 16 minutes at a time. Thanks for watching, and please direct all 94 slides of your concerns to the comments section, not the city council.